Welcome to Boatcast, a podcast on a boat. The whole idea is to float with the stories. This is the second edition of Boatcast, and it is part of the conference which Muziris Heritage Projects is conducting called the International Spice Route Conference. And they have invited scholars from 22 countries and across India. I'm just seeking knowledge from each of these scholars because they have so many stories and so many interesting and diverse topics to talk about. So I have been shooting since morning and I have not lost any energy. Um, this whole project is under RE Archives, which is conducting a show which is connected to see a boiling vessel to the oceans. So everything has fallen into place. With me today is a special guest, and the subject we are going to talk about, interests both of us. And she's a scholar, I'm a novice, and with me is Professor Bindu Menon. Welcome, Bindu.
Thank you.
And Professor Bindu Menon is an associate professor at the film and media at the Azim Premji University, Bangalore or Bengaluru, and her research focuses on Malayalam cinema, uh, economic geography of cinema, media movement between South Asia and the Persian Gulf, industrial cinema, contemporary and Middle East cinema, film work, and gender. That's
Right.
it's excellent. She has published widely in these areas and edited volumes. Uh, Two of her recent publications include Audible Love, letter songs, vocal letters, and the orality of love across Indian Ocean, and the amphibious media histories. Wow. This RE Archives has a show called
Right, right. I
Amphibian
know.
Aesthetics, which I am
I
also a
know.
part
I
of.
know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and this broadcast was part of Amphibian Aesthetics.
Right.
So, two
That,
of my forthcoming books, or your forthcoming books, are on Malayalam cinema called The Forgotten Features and Lost Greens,
right.
right? And Home and the World, that is Transition Circuits of Malabar Home Cinema. Apart from that, there's an interesting study she has done, which is not written here, but I'm going to tell you. I've taken her permission. She has done studies on the emerging trends of media in Lakshadweep and how they are communicating, and that is something we might talk about again. So, welcome to
Thank
podcast.
you.
I hope you enjoying the surroundings.
Well, I'm already enjoying. I'm very comfortable,
Yeah,
and
you
I can. And water has made me comfortable. I'm a Malayali.
Yeah.
Seeing water around me makes things just lifts things up. So, thank you.
The whole idea of this show is we a very informal, casual talk, which we will. I'm a bit of ADHD, so I might jump topics.
Well, all conversations are
Yeah,
to be
but
like that.
you can cut me, you can stop me and say, hey, hang on, and it's
No,
like
no,
two
I'll
drinks.
I'll I'll flow with it.
Okay, great. So, Bindu, tell me, how did you, first of all, you are
Become a film scholar.
yeah, and it's an interesting
Area of
yeah area because you are a film buff. Being a film scholar is interesting. How do you
It's an
separate the two?
occupational hazard. Now,
Yeah.
watching films have become an occupational hazard. I have to watch. I go for a conference and I might talk about something, but a number of people sitting in the audience were like, "But don't you think that Manumal Boys was this? Don't you think Avesham did this?" So, because of the circulation of Malayalam cinema now so widely, there is a very big audience and everybody is watching it and everybody has very interesting thoughts on it and people want you to chime in and so on. So it's become very compulsory for me to somewhat watch all films. But jokes apart, I'm really, yeah, I think this is a really good time for Malayalam cinema because of the new narratives that are coming up, new styles of filmmaking, very different modes of filmmaking. based out of Kochi, and quite large number of young talent. Everybody wants to make a film in Kerala now, like, don't they? Everyone wants to make a film. There's a saturation of a film culture here. So if you're asking me, how did I become a film scholar? I would say that somehow now I know that I wanted to become a film scholar right when I was 16-year-old, in some sense, because when I was when I was 16, 17, when I just moved to the to university education, I finished my 10th class and then I went to college to do then what was called the pre-degree. Kerala had already a very good film society culture. And I still remember watching this documentary on Gabriel García Márquez's imaginary village in 100 Years of Solitude. It was called My Macondo. Yeah, the film was on My Macondo. And I sat there and I watched it and I was blown because of this kind of speculative geographies, connections. There is this this magnificent novel, there is a village in that novel, and there is a documentary which is somewhat a mockumentary on that novel and that village, etc. That possibility was like opening up many things for me, right? So, but I would also say that most Malayalis actually have, I mean, that have grown up like that with so to also, like what you said, I will also go here and there because these are all connected ideas. If there is a good film industry in Kerala now, part of it we owe to a kind of a creating an audience, kind of, making it possible that there are almost all young people have grown up now in a watching a lot of world cinema. Right. So first was the film society culture, which kind of laid the ground for that, and the digital turn actually made it all the more easier for. So every small town will have a film festival in Kerala. I mean, you take a city, there will be there are 3 or 4 big film festivals, right? So which is organized annually and so on, and there is everywhere. I mean, part jokingly we say that while we talk, there is a film festival happening somewhere in Kerala. So that I think has been very important in creating an audience which is ready to experiment with a very very an audience which is experimental in viewing practices, uh, experiment with new forms, new styles, new narratives, all that. So I think that I was part of that journey, and that's what made me a film scholar. It was imperative that I turn into cinema studies. Although doing that was not very easy at that point because there were no cinema studies programs at that time when I started doing my PhD. Either people went into studying media, which is what I did, mass media, and then moved into cinema, researching cinema, or people went into English departments, which were opening up that time, having more, doing conversations beyond literature. So that was another area through which people entered cinema studies. So by the time I started doing my PhD, which was around 2005, in JNU, the cinema studies program got established, and I enrolled for a PhD in JNU, and that's where I had the most formal training in reading, analyzing, understanding cinema.
Wow. Wow. And being a cinema scholar is far better. And this is my opinion, so you can diss it. But I feel it's far better than being a critic. Because critic is so easy. You just see a film one night and then you write a review and but being a scholar, you really splice it, you go back again, you see it, you see the context, you see the historical context, you study the actors, and really this needs to be encouraged. And I hope you are creating the second line of Bindu's in Azim Premji. to?
Well, there are a lot of young scholars who have come up now. I mean, there are interesting film critics who also
There
do
are, there are, yeah, but
excellent analysis.
boss, but this device
Yeah,
has made every
yeah,
person with some, anybody with a camera here thinks that he or she is a
right,
photographer. It's
right.
not true.
No, it's cinema studies has expanded beyond just watching something and then saying what you like about it, styles, features, etc. It's moved beyond that to think about what is
Political
the
context.
exactly, so relationship between, why do we have fan cultures, very strong fan cultures? Are these just people who are crazy about cinema, or is there something else to it, that identity of being a fan? Thinking about so okay, we see something like we see a film, we like the film, um, think about how that film is made, location shoots, what is the history of location, how is that created out of something, right? So, and what are the connections, historical, economic, industrial? So it's I would say that it's a one of the really dynamic disciplines which embraces literary methods, it embraces history, historical research,
Yeah, and
political economy,
ideologically
of
also,
course, yeah.
everything.
So it's it's quite a dynamic discipline in that sense, and I'm glad that I got trained
So
where I got
I will
trained.
come back to fan culture because
Yeah.
now I'm
Okay.
going to keep that bookmarked and I'm going to come
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Come there. You spoke about Malayalam cinema.
Hmm.
I think Malayalam cinema for years,
Hmm.
and I'm talking for 40, 50, with Atul
Right.
Gopalakrishna's film,
Right.
Arvindan, Amaida, and John
Right.
Abraham.
American. Yeah.
All these films were landmark films,
Mm-hmm.
and they were, though they were Malayalam, but at the same time, there were popular films like Chemin and others being
Right.
made.
Right. Right.
And there was a Nazir also.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there was a Shakila also.
Yeah. Yeah. In the 90s. Yeah. In the early 2000s. Sorry.
Had a strong movement of sensible and thought-provoking cinema.
Right.
And maybe today they have all merged and come together. I
Right.
especially like the present day Malayalam films.
Right.
Films like Maheshinta,
Pratikaram. Yeah. Yeah.
Nyan Prakasham,
Nyan
both these are
Prakasham.
Fahad
Fahad Fasil films.
or Falimi, Sudanese from
Yeah.
Nigeria.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you think has sparked this rise? These are very unique films.
Hmm.
There is a film where I saw some Sunandan catering services or something, or Sumeda catering services, where
Hmm.
7, 8 friends get together
Right.
and were trying to make a birthday party of one of their children's birthday party and make biryani, and then they all get drunk, and then it's just that, but it's so beautifully made. What do you think is the reason for this revival as a
Okay.
spotter? Yeah.
So one of the things, I mean, it's difficult to give a plotted kind of history of that. It's more fragmented. Yeah, but
even hypothesis.
right. So I'm just it's just thinking on my foot,
Yeah.
so to speak. I mean, one of it is that, of course, what I said earlier, there is a kind of cumulative, gradual history of film viewing cultures, um, film societies, but also the digital turn, which brought in a mix of such variety of world cinema, and also has been a simultaneous development of technological training institutes around and so on. All of this has contributed, I think, in creating very robust creative networks, I would say,
That's
of
interesting.
professionals and young people who are living, thinking cinema and so on. So each of them come with set of people coming together and making cinema. So I mean, of course, cinema is one of the most collaborative of creative acts. There can be no cinema where just one person worked. That is a given. I think there is an importance of this kind of creative networks and spaces like, say, Kochi emerging, as where there is a concentration of such creative networks. The possibility that post production work, etc., can be split across different, you know, places now. Somebody can do the editing somewhere else, the sound mixing somewhere else, etc. All these possibilities, I think, has come together. But I think what is important is a certain one, this the audience which is receptive of that, which has happened through all of this, and the very robust creative networks that has emerged in Kerala. That is where I think it's in the interplay of all these that the new cinema has emerged. If I were to think, why do we have this here?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. If I can tell you, like the cinematographers Kerala has
Right, produced.
even production designers.
Right.
FTII has a good contingent
Right,
of
of Malayali
Malayali
filmmakers.
young
Training, yeah.
so people students study training to be filmmakers.
Mm, mm,
But I want to ask you the fan culture you see in Tamil Nadu, the
mm,
neighboring state from where you stay,
mm,
is is crazy.
mhm,
There they go, they worship. There is an
mm,
idolatry of their
mm,
their stars.
mm.
Whereas in Kerala, there is great respect for Mohanlal and Mammootty and all that, but I don't see any palabhishekam and people throwing. That why is the Malayali fan so different from the others?
Well, the more recent fan cultures, you might not see idolatory practices, but there is very significant fan cultures around stars in Malayalam now,
Oh, is it?
particularly Mammootty, Mohanlal, etc. Not necessarily in the ways you described, Tamil fan culture, etc. But there has in the last decade at least, you will see fans having posters, which you might not see in the, let's say, in the 1980s so much. But you will see a lot of fan posters and fan other kinds of fan iconography that the fans create around the internet, but also physically. You can see them, and also congregating around the fans, and during screenings, etc. Those have emerged in the last 2 decades, I would say. But about fan culture too, the fan cultures in each of these places are also quite distinct. Tamil Nadu, of course, has a long history of politics and cinema.
Well,
Certain.
yeah, they like yesterday when we were having dinner together, like in that boat, there was a person saying that they take grapes and cashew and almonds, and when Rajnikant would appear on the screen, he would throw it at the screen, and that is madness. But that doesn't happen here.
That is fun, I would say. That is see that so there's been very fascinating work on fan cultures in South Indian cinema. So S.V. Srinivas, who's a professor of media and literature and my colleague, has a really important book on megastar Chiranjeevi, and also on basically looking at what are the how the fan clubs formed and why do they form, and what kind of socialities emerge through them. So so across the works of many of these scholars, there are interesting ideas that are interesting analysis of fan cultures, which helps us position fan cultures not merely as this hyperbolic activities, but also ways through which very often subaltern male figures, male personalities, male identities find, and collectives, lay claim over spaces, right? So certain way of laying claim over the space, right? Throwing raisins at the screen is a certain way of claiming the space, right? So it's kind of a public activity which has certain spatial effects as well. So in some sense, it's also something which is um, laying a claim on the star's body itself, right?
Oh,
The star's
that's
body is not only a standalone thing. It is actively created through the interaction with the fan, right? We think of it as, so think about even how star figures are emerging. So if you think about, say, DMK cinema in the 1950s, much of MG Ramachandran's characters were something which was resonating, mirroring the working class um, protagonist, right? I mean, he was a working class
and he was a
protagonist.
do-gooder.
Yeah, do gooder, but toiling, upwardly mobile, challenging existing structures and so on. He's often a rickshaw puller, or those kinds of subaltern figures. Now this is the late M.S.S. Pandyan's work, which actually looks at this kind of icons and iconography that is emerging in cinema and its relationship with politics. So I would say that, I mean, on the surface, while it looks like some crazy behavior, uh, once we start unpacking the sociology of it, we see that it is more than that. It is a certain relationship to cinema. It is a certain relationship to the star's body itself. And it is a certain way of shaping a star fan relationship. So, in some sense, it's also about power relationships emerging in the context of cinema. So, quite interesting set of ideas have emerged in that, and insights have emerged from by people who work on that area.
That's really interesting. So now I want to jump to, we are on the Indian Ocean,
Right.
Arabian Sea.
See.
You have studied the Middle East influence on Malayalam cinema and Malayalam life, and
Right.
how small films, home videos, and home films are creating new narratives.
Mhm.
You could throw some light on that?
Right. In fact, I would say that my argument is that Kerala have had a huge influence on the Middle East, right?
Okay.
The larger Middle East, what we call Middle East, the Gulf Council countries, whether it's UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, or Kuwait, etc. In Malayalam cinema, on this on Kerala and the Gulf media connections, there were a few things which, of course, was the first kind of films that emerged, that has already emerged. Malayalam, the Gulf is a presence in Malayalam cinema. One, of course, in the post 1980s, the remittance, not just remittance from the Gulf, but investment from the Gulf had kind of revived and shaped the Malayalam cinema of 1980s, since 1980s. It's been a very important, source of capital. That's one part of it. Second is that it's because of the large scale migration to the Persian Gulf, there is an important cultural imprint on the Malayali everyday life of the Gulf migration, right? Films also have thematically explored. Sometimes it's about, the husband who's away, and the children and family whose wife who are left behind, and their sense of, their grief, their sense of separation, ideas of belonging, etc. But it's also, some of these films were also exploring themes like what does life in the Gulf mean for these migrants, right? How do they live? What do they bring back, right? Or sometimes the Gulf returnee is kind of a very, comic reference in Malayalam films, who's displaying wealth, who's, have these Rolex watches and other kinds of luxury life and so on. So it's true over Malayalam cinema in one sense. But that was not what I was, and there is some interesting work which people have done on those, reading those films. What interested me was to think about, because I started working in the 2000s, 2000 end of 2010s. At that time, there has been films made in the Gulf, the post-digital times, and I was interested in looking at those films. One, of course, was these home videos, which I started, home films, which is a Malabar genre, primarily within the Muslim community, addressing the Muslim community of Malabar, talking about social reform questions. But in all of those, migration was an important presence, right? What does migration do to the Muslim family? It's one of the, important themes in those films. So these are my entry points there. But then later, after I entered that through the home videos, what I also realized is um, to understand what Malayalis didn't go there just just to do work and come back. You increasingly, and particularly after the digital times, we also started seeing people who made media there, right? Like I can give you the example of, and this is also kind of a promotion. No, promotion for his archive. There is something called AVM Unni Archives. This is a YouTube channel, and it is hosted by AV Muhammad Unni, who is a long-term Doha resident, right? And he's a great example of what did media mean for a Malayali, right? So there was all of these people go with media skills, right? So, for example, Mr. Unni was somebody who had been trained in journalism. He was a photographer. He goes there, he works in the electricity department in Doha. But in Doha, what Mr. Unni does is also to document Doha life extensively. So, he begins with photography. He migrates very easily to video. He's an amateur videographer. He's made amazing videos of the city life of Doha. So, Mr. Uni is just one example. But what currently, if you look at the Gulf, most institutions, media institutions, you will see a number of Malayalis employed there, right? As technicians, as cinematographers, editors, uh, sound artists, and so on and so forth. So, there is the question of media labor migration. There is also the interesting scenario of how migrants made media in the Gulf, right? The other aspects that I've looked into is that certain kinds of genres in films and music and so on, which are specific to migration, right? People always has a very ludic relationship with media, right? You invent things with media. So I started looking at this particular genre on which some historians have done really good work of what is called the Dubai Cut. In other words, it's Dubai letter. These are Malayalam audio cassettes. It's a song genre, which is written by, which is imagined to be written by a wife who is left at home by a husband who has migrated to the Gulf, and she's asking him, what kind of a life am I leading, right? So it's viraha in one sense, but it's also something which is questioning his actions. And there is a reparty letter, etc. And this becomes a very big audio cassette genre. And this is all happening in the context of migration. So, plus, if you look at audio cassette itself, there were lots of practices that migration has brought into audio cassette use. The Kerala migration to the Gulf is not unique in that sense. You will also see audio, this kind of practice of recording and recording letters for family back home, for your wife, for your sisters, for your children and parents and so on, and send it with a friend or a colleague who is coming here, and they would record. And this happens in the context of the stereo revolution, the late 1980s, if you would remember.
You had the
Exactly. Yeah, so that starts coming from, through the Gulf Coast to the, parts of Kerala, and migrant families particularly start using it. This has happened in, the Pakistan-British migration context as well, as far as I know. And there is a very older history of Italian migrants using gramophone to record, sounds and so on. Of course, gramophone did not have such lengthy, records to record. For it did not allow that technologically. These are some of the themes that I've looked at. Additionally, then something else which I have explored is also how has the how has things moved between these places, right? How did audio cassettes come here? How did video cassettes, audio cassettes, etc., circulate between the Gulf and Kerala? So when in India, the audio cassettes and video cassettes actually, audio cassettes particularly, when they emerged, India didn't have the technology to sophisticated technology that is so widely available for recording and reproducing, right? Whereas because of the proximity to a kind of petrochemical, this is a largely petrochemical derived industry, the Gulf had all those facilities. So the original recordings would travel from here. This happened for VHS cassettes as well. Will travel from here as film spoofs and so on. Film pools, sorry, the film pools which would travel to the Gulf by post or as cargo by air primarily, and there they would create the audio cassettes and later VHSs from the Gulf. And then there were companies which were specifically specializing in this. So there is also this kind of a aspect to this connection between the Gulf Coast and the Gulf cities and media here. So there are various aspects to this. There is currently the FM radio in Malayalam language and other languages like Nepali and so on in the Gulf cities, which is very important for a sense of sonic world making for the migrants. So there are a number of aspects to this migration related to media beyond the question of films, right?
Yeah, so now, so interesting that you say that migration, also inland migration happens. We are not talking the revival of the Bhojpuri industry. There are people who have left Mumbai and are working in Bhojpuri film industry, which is doing better. Marathi cinema is also looking up.
Right.
So because of the digital revolution, do you think that all these Nepali cinema and then finally we'll go to Lakshadweep, all these are reviving and there is a space for that because today you can put your film on YouTube. Amir Khan puts his film on YouTube. So there is a platform.
Right.
So you think that is happening?
Some of it, yes. I mean, you could see that a number of such, within quotes, sometimes people refer to as minor film cultures, etc. Like the Manbhum videos in Bengal, in this Manbhum region of Bengal, the home videos which I talked about, which is completely migrated to the YouTube platforms. All of this is now made possible through that. So, in some sense, cinema also, I mean, the digital turn has allowed this multiplicity of, cinemas to emerge. There are also locally made films which are locally screened and kind of, so a number of such small cinemas are locally released in a theater, right? And after the first 1 week, they would migrate to the cyber platform. So that has happened. Part of it is what the digital affords, right? It affords certain kind of circulation. It is a very mutable form. It allows you to, become very and the possibility of viral circulation, etc., has actually given a new energy to these kinds of forms. But what is also allowed is to have a cinematic imagination which is big investments and so on, right? You don't need that kind of capital investment to make these smaller films, and that's across the country. Even during the VHS times, is the emergence of the Malegaon,
Malegaon, yeah.
yeah,
I
film
used to
cultures.
watch them actually.
Yeah, right,
I used to get them from
right.
local library and all, and I would find them hilarious.
Yeah. So what is, I mean, on the one hand, there is an expression that is possible through this. The other is also what is fascinating me is desire for cinema, right? There is a desire for cinema across populations, and it is at times not enough to, while you love a certain other
I can
kind of
maybe
cinema.
add here. There is a desire for cinema in my language and dialect, which is
Right.
me.
Right.
So that is
Correct.
really fascinating
Right.
revelation. Do you think that the film industry across
Right.
I'm
Right.
not talking of south, north, east, west.
Hmm.
I'm talking of Indian film industry
Hmm.
needs to look at gender equality, gender safety
Hmm.
more seriously than it is
Right.
at this moment.
Right, right. Of course, I mean, one of the, what is interesting is also that from the film industry itself, unfortunate, unacceptable kind of events and so on, it should have happened much before. But there is more and more, one, awareness, two, collectivization, three, kind of openings within policy that has, that is that is far more possible now to negotiate different kinds of aspects about for that the film industries as, and largely creative industries, as a safe workplace for women on the one hand, women, but also I would say that in an expansive way, transgenders and others who are there, the whole line of, and these are not only
All genders.
actresses,
All.
there are also, yeah, there are all genders, particularly women and transgenders and so on, but also the different lines of work, right? The Women in Cinema Collective in Kerala has been one of the most pioneering leading voices in the past decade, since 2017 that they formed. But there are also several other lines of work which has collectivized in the recent past, happening in other industries as well. So one, but no, I'm not saying that this has happened everywhere equally. In Kerala, there is much public discourse around that. There has been a lot of kind of efforts that has been made also by the state government. But there has been good conversations and some headways around making, for example, instituting a kind of a posh committee to look into these matters at every production unit, at other larger policy levels. So there has been some headways in this direction, which is welcome, but there is more
You
to
have
be
written
done.
a paper on it.
I've written
But it's
some on it.
not easily accessible, is it?
No, it is there on academia, which
It's
is
there on
openly
academia.
openly
So
available.
any student interested, please do read Dr. Bindu Menon's paper. It's called The Gendered Film Worker. It's important to read and important to discuss. Not only women, men need to read it as much because that's important. Lastly, and we are coming to the end of our journey.
Is it about Shah Rukh Khan?
No, I wish it was. We both love Shah Rukh Khan. We'll keep. I will ask. I will not disappoint you. So, but वो last में. So मैं हूँ ना.
Yeah.
Okay.
With
So,
the hands
yeah,
open.
with the
Yeah.
hands. So, you have gone to Lakshadweep and understood their media movement and their media contact. And tell us about that because that is really interesting. Everybody thinks of we see Lakshadweep in the context of tourism and
Right.
beautiful beaches. Second is conservation, or as you said, the extractivism.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
But what you said was interesting. Talk about that before we get on to
Yeah.
Shah Rukh.
The no, I mean, I started paying attention to what happens in Lakshadweep like everybody else after 2017. So I started looking at some of these older films. There's a Malayalam film called Dweepa, which is Dweepa in Malayalam is island, and which is Lakshadweep for everybody. Nobody says Lakshadweep. In Malayalam, you just say Dweepa. It is meant that it is Lakshadweep. So Dweepa is a 1970s film, and then we have a set of films division kind of documentaries made. Some of them made with good intention, but it's largely framed as all these films are they position Lakshadweep as this very pure, indigenous, innocent paradise where you go and get kind of renewed, right? It's a from the alienation of the cities, from the kind of urban crisis that we all live in, etc. So it's kind of a developmentalist gaze. It is a civilizational gaze. It's more anthropological in nature, etc. This is what you see in the first part of this filmmaking. But what I see after the digital turn uh, in the last decade is a number of filmmaking, very interesting filmmaking practices emerging in Lakshadweep, which are on the one hand, as you were actually pointing out about this desire for a film in one's own language. So very interesting films which are made in Jaseri or Mahal or the Vehi, which are the island languages. Not all of them have scripts, made in those languages and subtitled in Malayalam, right? So an interesting kind of what you call a graphic politics, which has emerged in different parts of India, particularly with tribes who don't necessarily work with scripts the way other languages do. So the digital technology of subtitling and so on is offering new ways in which language can be taught and cinema can be taught, right? So there's an interesting what you call linguists call transcripturality, which is that you work with multiple languages in the context of a film, and it's also a certain way of talking about autonomy, linguistic autonomy, talking about authority, about politics, and a certain desire for expressing one's own experiences. That's one. The other is films actually kind of really point out infrastructural limitations, advocate for that. Economic crisis, environmental crisis, climate change, all of them figure in very interesting ways in them. An interesting aspect is also the way in which they mobilize uh, the cosmology of the island, right? So the marine creatures, um, the wind, the coral reefs, all of them are narrative agents in the stories that they tell, right? Just a very quick example, there's a film called Appalam Malani, a very short film. Unless you understand what, which is about a squabble between two friends, right? They are fighting in this wet marshland and so on, like very bodily fight. It's about these friends who are entering into a fight. Now, unless you understand what is Appalim Malanyim, you will not understand any of these references, because Appalim Malanyim are two sea marine creatures around the island who live in proximity but who are at odds with each other all the time, right? So there are just a small example. Or other films like there's something called Swells of Murambu, which is this set of young surfers who surf, and in beautiful this, it's a surfing spot, international surfing spot, but it's about their relationship to water and the tides and their own, and they say at one point, one of them says that the tide will teach me, right? So there are very rich kind of elements of the island life itself that is entering into the narratives in Lakshadweep. So multiple very interesting kind of genres, experimentation, etc., happening in that sphere is what I would like to say. And it's worth watching. Everything is on YouTube. That's what they can afford. But these are fantastic films to watch.
Okay. And now, as we promised,
About
SRK. So 5 questions about SRK.
Right.
I'm
See, I'm already laughing when you say.
I'm going to ask
Yeah.
5 questions about
Right.
SRK. So, which was SRK's first film?
Oh, that is a
Okay, I'll
that
give
quiz.
you a clue.
Well, I started watching SRK
I
in
will give it to
Fauji.
you.
In Fauji. And that's where I started watching. It's a television
It's
series.
connected to Kerala. It's connected with Arundhati Roy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's where, in which Annie gives those ones. I've watched
So
it. Okay.
yes,
Oh,
now
that's
we-
his first film. Okay.
Yeah, that was his
Yeah.
first film. First negative role?
Not Dar.
No.
The one before that. Singing the-
Shetty.
Yeah. But I'm forgetting the name of the film.
हार के जीतने वाले को अरे I'll give you
Starts with B.
yeah Bazigar.
Bazigar.
अरे okay. When is his birthday?
November sometime. No? Yeah?
Huh?
So I'm not qualified to be a fan in this.
Absolutely. Now, this is something you need
You
to
asked
study.
me. You asked me what is. You asked me what is my favorite film.
Okay, what is your favorite?
Rice.
Rice, yeah. And of course, don't name just one film.
No, I mean Pathan. I
Which-
like. I wrote on Pathan. I wrote on Jawan. I wrote. Those are the two short pieces I wrote. But Rise is my favorite film. Also for the reason that from Rise onwards, I think there is an interesting shift in the way in which is the whole. There's a representative regime shift happening where he's actually boldly taking on roles which is about the contemporary Muslim identity.
Yes.
Right? So that I think
Chak De is my favorite film where he
all films are my favorite
and
films. Is why
yes, of course. So you know what kind of Shah Rukh Khan I like and what kind of Shah Rukh Khan you like.
No, I like all Shah Rukh Khan.
But overall, we are very happy. Thank you so much. I hope you had a good time.
I did accept that. Now I will be thrown out of the Shah Rukh Khan fandom.
No.
How will I
cut this
how
out.
will I how will I survive that? Cut out where I'm failing the quiz. Only make me talk about rice and